Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time of day it is. Um, my name is John. I'm a writer. If you're new here on this channel or seeing me for the very first time, I'm coming today to first off explain why I really haven't posted anything since my introductory video more than a month ago. And also, hopefully, start off a trend where I post a video every week on Mondays. I figure mental health and Monday kind of has a nice alliteration to it. As a writer, I am a fan of a little bit of alliteration. And I wanted to first off start talk a little bit about the fact that something I've only very recently been diagnosed with, ADHD of the inattentive variety. Um, like to put out there. This is specifically my journey and my experience and things that have helped me. Um, Please see a doctor, a therapist, a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever works for you, and whatever works, if you think you to get the whatever assessments you need or anything, if you think you might have this as well. But yeah, that is, I think, a large part of you know, one of the reasons why I find things like regularly posting and updating people and promoting myself is that kind of requires a kind of regular attention and focus to detail that as someone with ADHD, I can sometimes find very hard to do, even as I now am. And again, this is my personal experience and journey being medicated for my ADHD, I think has improved my life immeasurably. Um, but yeah, basically, I've probably had ADHD most, if not my entire life. Um, that's not something as someone I'm 36 years old when I was growing up. Really, the only type of ADHD or ADD, as it would have been more commonly called then, to my understanding, really what they were looking for is more of the hyperactive version, the like can't sit still, fidgeting, bouncing all over walls, having trouble focusing and concentrating on school. But as someone who was often very quiet and introverted and did well, did great in school, as a matter of fact, not to brag on myself, but that really wasn't something anyone would have at the time would have paid attention to. Um, as I grew up and got older and started learning more about ADHD, and now called ADHD as it was now more commonly being called, and most particularly, since I started dating and then married someone who is in the psychological profession, does therapy, social work, all that stuff. I learned a lot from her in terms of sort of what that meant, what that entailed. And, for a long time, I still sort of, probably because of, when I grew up, you know, I started putting in, thinking of things like I'd notice occasionally, yeah, maybe I do have a little bit, but it's very mild and not very impactful. And I might talk about it more in depth in later video, but let's just say some things in the last few years, let's just say since COVID, but probably went back before that, was really impacting some other stuff I had going on, my anxiety and depression. I will talk about that more in a future video, but it finally started. I finally started putting the pieces together that I quite probably have ADHD. So I went and got an actual psychological evaluation for that. Got a confirmed diagnosis, and with my psychiatrist, started taking medication, and it's really changed my life tremendously just in the last 2 months now. I think I've been taking medication for my ADHD. Um, There's still some things I need to work out and do. For example, I still need to get better about and work on, you know, making plans, setting up, I still need to work on, breaking down big tasks into smaller steps and, establishing more timelines ahead of time. I've personally felt has been very helpful. Um, that has helped me become, in the last 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, been as productive as writing I've been, aside from one or two times in my life otherwise, where I've had like a really big burst of productivity with my writing. Um, and yeah, that's what and now I'm working on getting these videos out and some of this self promotion out, where I'm just talking about myself. Um, I've got some more videos planned this week that I hope will be some, good information about my interests, my writing process, and starting to read some of my finished books aloud. But if you're in the same boat and you're just having trouble putting words to paper, I mean, there's lots of stuff that's going on. I've certainly had moments of writer's block that's completely separate from ADHD, but I mean, to give you an idea of just sort of how much it's impacted me is just the timelines of what I've already written. My first book, Shadow of the Past, available on Amazon. Um, I first started coming up with this idea and story and running it through my head when I was in high school. So easily 20 years ago now is when I first got the idea for this, but I didn't start writing it, but put word to word processor until right before my junior year of college. Did a couple of chapters and then got busy and distracted with other things. Sign that I had ADHD, that, focusing on, you know, balancing things out and focusing on one thing, focusing on multiple things, including hobbies, being difficult. I wrote a little more right before my senior year. And then in one of my very first sort of real big bursts of productivity, I finished the book in the couple months before I started graduate school in 2009. And even then, it took me, uh, when was this published? Um, should have looked this up ahead of time. Yeah, it took me until 2017. So it took me a further 8 years after I finished the rough draft of this to edit this and publish it. And pretty much the only reason I ended up doing that is because my mom challenged me that of getting this up online and available and actually publishing it before my 30th birthday, which I did. That's one of the things that's always kicked me in the butt, is having a deadline and or consequences is one of the things that have always reliably gotten me to focus, which, again, spoiler alert, in my personal experience, is not the most healthy way of doing things. But that's the project where, probably looking at, oh, what would that be, definitely more than a decade, probably close to 15 years from initial conception to publication. um, my second book, And the Sunburned Red, doesn't have a has a very similar pattern to that. I probably also started coming up with or thinking about this idea in probably when I was starting out college, as I started coming up with this idea, or the concept of this story, um, for And the Sunburned Red. I did that. Oh, yeah, and I think I first put word to word processor for this and wrote the first few chapters in 2012. Did it for a November National Novel Writing Month. And then again, put this down for a long time. Didn't really do anything with it until after I published my first book. Before I published this one, in 2021. So it took an additional, you know, granted, my first book, I also spent some time writing and editing it and putting out a second draft that I was more pleased with before finishing and working on this. Um, but yeah, now I have had a lot more success with my third book. I've knocked out in the last few months 3 or 4 chapters. I'm averaging about a chapter a weekend. And I'm hoping to have that process go a lot quicker. But anyway, again, this is, you know, a somewhat rambled video, which also suits my tendencies. Is that I just sat down and started doing this. I didn't, worry about trying to write a script out or anything like that. I feel like something like that would be rather difficult for me, but at least at the meantime, probably most of these videos will just be off the cuff. But I plan on writing this out in sort of a more detailed fashion on my blog sometime soon. Um, but thank you for tuning in and watching me talk a little bit about my ADHD, how it's impacted me, my life, um, you know, how I've gotten a little bit of help with that, and also how I'm working on how it's impacted my writing, how it's impacted my efforts to get myself out there, introduce myself to the world, promote myself, etc. And that I'm what I'm working on with that. So thank you all for your time today. Um, like, share, subscribe, comments, all of that would be wonderful, as would anybody who's interested in purchasing or reading my books, which are available on Amazon. I will put links on that down below, as well as to my blog, where I have updates on writing and post excerpts of my third book as I am in the process of writing it. But I hope you are all having a good day and that your mental health is being kind to you today as we start yet another new week. And I will talk to you and see you soon. Bye bye.